Welcome to Audacity Works, a podcast inspired by and dedicated to the working artist, the creative entrepreneur, and generally, doing the damn thing. This exists on the premise that the world belongs to those who have the audacity to believe that their lives have value. This is for you. Welcome to Audacity Works. I'm your host, Rachel Strickland, and this is episode number 169. And it is an episode inspired by the fact that sometimes you just need to hold an unexpected funeral. I promise it will make sense by the end of the episode. I have just returned home. What is today? Monday? I don't know. Saturday night, quite late, from sweet retreats in Puerto Escondido, Mexico, where I was blissfully not reading the news at all the entire time I was gone. If I'm perfectly honest, I know I have a lot to catch up on. I also know it's not going to be great, so I haven't done it yet. It is what I'm going to do today, but I wanted to record this podcast episode for you first, with a voice unencumbered by the burden of knowledge, because I'm not exactly sure what has shaken out in the past 10 days while I've been gone, but I am absolutely certain that it's harrowing. I've gotten a lot of messages from my friends outside of the country, outside of the United States, being like, "I am so sorry." I'm like, don't tell me. I'm here. I need to lead this retreat. I need to be able to have the capacity to do my job. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that if I find out the truth of what it is that you've just said. So yes, I remained in active, intentional, purposeful ignorance for many days in a row, and I would do it again. I'm not ashamed of it. I know that I'm going to learn the things, and I have every knowledge that I will soon be encumbered like the rest of you. But I also knew that to show up and do my job fully and well, and to be effective in that role, I needed to maintain and protect my capacity. So I did. And the reason that I'm sharing that fact is because I think it's important to know yourself and to act accordingly. And people really seem to judge themselves and expect a lot of themselves, like to wake up and learn everything that's happening right away so that you can be informed, without acknowledging that there is a cognitive cost to that. And sometimes, especially lately, there's an emotional cost to that. And those are real costs. And it doesn't make you selfish if you acknowledge those costs and adjust your plans accordingly. It makes you realistic. We were not built for this, my friends. So onward, hoes. I do want to take a second to say thank you to the guests of Aerial Serpent, who came out all the way down to Puerto Escondido in Mexico. It's on the southern coast, to spend a week with me and Cristina Canizares, where we were centering sustainability. And it's not a huge surprise that the people that we attracted, and I think, sometimes I think I could be clearer in my marketing. Whatever it is that we said in our marketing, we attracted the perfect people. I could not have handpicked them better. And perhaps because the subject and the point of the retreat was like how to create and train forever. Like, here's some tools. Let's do this for the rest of our lives. Shockingly, no one there was 25. And that was like really wonderful to be a part of. And before we gathered for the retreat, we had sent out a little Google form, a questionnaire, like, well, where are you getting stuck in your training? What about in your creative practice? And I started noticing a trend, which was, people were saying, it just doesn't feel the way it used to. I want it to feel good again. I'm not inspired. I want to be re-inspired. Basically, lots of different ways of saying more or less the same thing, which is it doesn't feel the way it used to feel, and I want it to feel that way again. And I can't find that feeling anymore, whether it's physical or, the emotional, the emotional state that we get from creating work and being inspired and working on something that we're excited by and believe in. And after reading that for so many entries and then meeting them, I started to have a realization. This is even before I taught my first class at the retreat, which was I'm going to be doing everyone a disservice if I just pile more tools on top of them. Like, you could do this in your movement and move a different way. You could look at it through this lens and discover this kind of transition. It would have been a disservice to do that without first, acknowledging that we need to molt and have a funeral for those old versions of ourselves. Of course, it feels different when you make work in your new. I'm not even going to quantify this with age, right? Because I have seen a new artist aged 50 have the exact same feelings and emotional arc that I had making work when I was a new artist at 25. So it's not really age, but I think it is experience. And sometimes those line up and sometimes they don't. But I'll say when you're a new artist and you're within, your first 4 years of making work, it is chasing the shiny thing. It has to be. There's no other. What else do you do? You're like, that looks pretty. Let's go over there. That has a sparkle to it. That looks tasty. I want to go lick that. And that's how we make our choices. That's how I made my choices. I'd get an idea and be like, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. And I didn't have any other context. And I didn't make bad choices. I made great choices. I made a lot of work, and most of it was pretty good. Some of it was excellent, and some of it was deplorable. Every single bit of that was necessary, but it was really the way that it felt to be inspired and to go about making work felt really different. If I expected to feel the same now, 19 years in to making work, of course I would feel like I was missing the mark all the time. But like we talked about last week, if you're constantly missing the mark, you're not the problem. The mark is the problem. And it seems really obvious when you say it out loud, but really you need to acknowledge these parts of ourselves and thank them and let them go. Let that old version go. So that's what I brought to class, that first class. I think we should have a funeral for the old versions of ourselves, or at least a molting ceremony, where we discard a skin and we're able to move forward, having given thanks for how it felt before when we were newer at this, to create, to be inspired, to train, to learn, making room for it being a different experience now. We don't really know what it feels like to be inspired as the creatures we are right now, because we haven't let go of who we were. And everyone was really amenable to that, and I was gonna do it right away, but it seemed kind of rushed. Be like, okay, now everybody go write in your notebooks and we'll have a funeral tomorrow for you. I'm gulp, that's a lot. So I changed my mind, and everyone seemed amenable to that, to put it off until the night before, the end of the retreat, which gave everyone, myself included, time to write down the answers to the questions. I acknowledge that this is what it used to feel like to make work. I acknowledge that I'm going to release that. Here's some other things I'm going to release. I'm going to make room and space for experiencing being a working artist in a new way as this version of myself now. And if you too would like to have a molting ceremony for yourself, here's what we did. We did this at the beginning of our last class, and that was on purpose because I didn't know how it was going to go. I thought it was probably going to be emotional, and I didn't want to just be like, okay, bye, and send people off on their way after that. And if it was at the beginning of class, then at least I would have another hour with them, and we could work on some other tasks. So I told everyone, bring the things that you have written, whatever you want to release. And I scrounged up a deep pot, like a stainless steel pot, as fire is very dangerous in Mexico in January, so we wanted to be extra careful about that. I put a small votive candle that I had made with dragon's blood in the bottom of that pot, and had it like a stick of copal incense that I had bought in the market in La Punta. And we formed a circle, kind of created the circle. And here, I want to just take a second to say this about creating ritual space. It doesn't have to be this like huge thing, right? It doesn't have to be like so serious. You don't have to have a ritual bath and scrub yourself with salt every single time you want to engage in like a ritual practice or magical practice. It's mundane. It should be part of life, right? Yet all it really takes is some dedicated focus, some attention. That's the magic, your attention. Oh, yeah, it can be really fun for it to be a big solemn deal or a big joyful deal. It can, but it doesn't have to follow any sort of rigid guidelines. I think what happened was I asked, like, who does anyone want to cast the circle? And I think it was Heather Bentley. I was like, I'll do it. So I handed her the copal incense, and I'm like, all right, 3 times clockwise around the outside of us, and we're in business. Worked great. And then I told a story that I may tell you in a moment. And I went first, if you are leading something, you should go first, and like let people be second. Don't make them be first. And said the thing that I was shedding. I'll tell you too, because I love it. I got it from, I don't know, I saw some video somewhere, and it was just to summarize where I'm going with this. Let the good woman die so that the whole woman can rise. Yummy. So I burnt that, and then I just sat back and I let them go, at their own pace. They could say something if they wanted to. They didn't have to. And just to stay by the pot until whatever they had written had burned, for safety's sake, as much as like the pleasure of watching something that you're releasing be consumed by a fire and turned into ashes. Love a chemical reaction. And then we stood up, gave thanks, and I think Devaya closed the circle with the incense, one circle going counterclockwise, aka Widdershins. And we went back to the studio and got back to making some art. And yeah, a lot of us cried, myself included. But it's a transformational moment. And I thought that it would be good to share the story that I told them. Really debated on it for a while, but I told them, so I'm going to tell you as well. Here is the story. When I was a new artist, I had been working for, 5 or 6 years maybe. And I had a dream. And the dream was that I had this house that had been built on long stilts in the middle of a tumultuous sea. And it was very ramshackle, sort of like clapboard, put together with spit and paper clips and chewing gum. But it had been it was a house. It was constructed. It was like a playhouse you have or you build when you're a kid on these long rickety stilts, and it's swaying dangerously in these stormy ocean waters. And if I go inside the shack. Every little corner is filled with something precious, like a tiny statue or a bunch of dried flowers or a feather that I found. And I know, standing in this house and feeling it sway under my feet, that it is going to fall. And I can either leave or fall with it. Which seems like an easy choice, but it wasn't, because this house was so beloved, because it was mine. Every inch of it was mine. I put that there. I put that little feather there. I put that statue there. I tacked this board to that board and made a chair. And it was so precious, but I knew it was going to fall. And that I was going to have to build a new house, and I could either take what I could carry and leave, or stay and collapse with it. I woke up crying from that dream, and I took it to Christina Nakaya. We met up in New Orleans. I don't know what we were doing there, but we were in New Orleans together in some outdoor garden with the cafe lights. And I told her about that dream, and she understood right away. She was like, yeah, that the way that you have been doing things, it was beautiful and it was important, but it's time for it to change. Like, you're already changing. And there are aspects of the old house that you can build into the new house, but the new house was never supposed to last forever. It wasn't supposed to be forever. It was just supposed to be. And that got both of us, so we sat in the beer garden and cried together for a little while. It was great. Get you some friends that you can do that with. And it was important, and back then, it was important not just to acknowledge that things were changing, but to love and give gratitude to that ramshackle, symbolic shack swaying dangerously in the waves. Like, all of science and mathematics says that shack shouldn't have been allowed to exist and to stand at all, much less to stand for 5 or 6 years doing its job. Like, what an unlikely and beautiful thing to have made. And it wasn't supposed to be forever. It was just supposed to be. And since then, there have been several iterations of houses. I'm looking at the time. I want to say thank you for sharing this time with me. Let me sit in your ear or in your car and keep you company while you fold your laundry, or you drive somewhere, or you walk your dog. Also, a request. I would like to interview an artist, preferably someone who's worked in the performing arts, physical performing arts, who is old. I'm talking 70s would be great. Who is still making work of some kind. Or at least recently has. I really want to interview someone who has worked a lot in a long time and is in the late autumn or winter of their lives. So if you have any suggestions, please send them to me. And if you have suggestions and requests for future episodes, you can reach me always on Instagram at Rachel Strickland Creative, or on Patreon at Rachel Strickland Creative. This podcast is powered by Patreon, so extra velvet shout out to my amazing patrons. Thank you so much for keeping me, alive, and allowing this podcast and so much more that I do to exist in the way that it does. Thank you for standing with me. Until next time, my friends, molt what you need to molt so that we can have that fresh and shiny skin. And don't go back to sleep.